What's up, you majestic what the fluffs? I'm Tyler,
And I'm Shorty.
and we are the Inner Idiots.
This podcast contains graphic language, violence, and other things that you probably should not let your children listen to. Please enjoy.
That's right, don't adjust your ear holes. We're back. And you missed us, you know you did. Put your ugly kids to bed, set the deuce loose. It's time for the Inner Idiot. I am your host, Tyler Havlin. And it ain't wet from sweat, and we ain't done yet, so don't sweat the technique. Oh man, it's Saturday. You know what Saturday means. Saturday means we got a guest. And I'm excited about this one. Shorty, say hi.
Hi.
All right, now let me officially introduce
Here
you.
I am.
That's right. The Lord that's never bored, the commander of the comic books. Shorty Fresh in the flesh. 2 claps and Ric Flair for Lord Shorty Hoffman. Woo!
Saw. Comic book saw.
Comic book saw.
Is that a little spicy on the end there?
Yeah, is that how I rolled that time?
It's exactly how you rolled that time.
It's just the excitement for today's
all right,
guest.
all right.
And today's guest. Oh, man. Been trying to get him on here a while. He is the number 3 ranked heavyweight fighter in Kentucky. In his last bout, he won the Valor Heavyweight Championship against undefeated 6'7" champ, former undefeated 6' champ, CJ Baker. He's a man of many talents. Let's give it up. 2 claps and Ric Flair for Jesse, the Pride Slayer Romans.
What's up,
Woo!
guys? Good to be here today.
Hey, man, we're happy to have you. We're going to roll into today's top 5 so we can get into talking about you afterwards.
Awesome.
All right.
I want to preface this that I know nothing at all about, like, what is it, UFC, right?
MMA is the term. UFC
Okay, yeah.
is the promotion. Yeah.
Okay, so MMA. I know nothing of MMA.
That's all right, man. I have an extensive background, so I can carry it.
I've heard you talk about it before.
Well, my 5 favorite fighters are anime characters, so that's fair.
This motherfucker. This guy
Hey,
gets it.
there we
I
go.
know it.
Whitebeard's number 1.
And
Whitebeard.
And there's the top 5 for the day. Your top 5 favorite fighters and mine, because Shorty sucks at this.
Well, hold on. If we're moving anime into this, I can make a list.
All right, you make a list while we talk about his. You want to go
Anime.
first?
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
hear it.
I'll do it in less of an order and more of like a group.
Okay.
Definitely Whitebeard from One Piece. He's just kind of in mystery a lot of the series, and when he does finally fight, like he's fighting to save one of his sons, and it's just an absolute, war, and he's a monster, and I really just like his style and the way he acts. Naruto's definitely on there, and I know a lot of people say he's a little cliche, but specifically when he fights Pain.
Oh, bro,
yeah.
you speak the right language. That's such a good fight.
Yeah.
I haven't made it that far. In the
Oh my
series.
god, that is such a gnarly fight.
It's amazing. I mean, if you didn't like him before, thought he was generic, when you see that fight, you're just like, oh.
When he fucking loses it, when Hinata gets hurt,
yeah.
bro.
Don't
then-
spoil this for me, guys.
Yeah. Because
Oh
there's a lot of juicy stuff in that part. And then probably my favorite real life fighter would definitely be Jan Blachowicz. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. He's the 205-pound UFC champion, which UFC is the top promotion. So he's the best light heavyweight in the world. And then in his last fight, he fought the middleweight champion who came up to meet him, undefeated Israel Adesanya, and beat him. So Jan is a guy, I think he's 38, and I'm 28, and I look at his career because at one point he had his wife beg his manager to, get in touch with the UFC matchmaker and give him one more chance because he was on a 3-fight losing streak, maybe even a 4-fight, I'm not sure. And then, went on a tear, and, in his last X amount of fights has only lost 1, and has been finishing these guys who, Dominic Reyes, who he won the title from, I believe, John Jones had vacated and they fought, and Dominic Reyes took John Jones the distance.
Yeah, I remember that fight.
Yeah, so like Jan finishing him the way he did, just brutally knocking him out, was one of those things that just kind of shocked me. And
Nice.
even though I always believed in Jan, seeing it was just like, wow, and I can do that too if I work hard. So just, he's my favorite real life fighter. As far as One Piece goes as well, there's a lot of really awesome people on there. But I gotta say Usopp, and he's kind of like a coward on there, and he embodies like, you know, what it is to be a coward, but somehow he always, you know, pulls something out of his ass, and I can admire that too. So, you know, because sometimes, man, it's scary to fight. I know a lot of people put on that facade, but I'll have you know I'm not one of them. It's scary as hell to fight. I get nervous, you know, but once my music plays and I walk out, it's gone. I don't know how, and well, it's the Lord. He wants me doing it that way. And then as far as my last one, I gotta say Pain, just because
So good.
he's like an embodiment of like going through a bunch of shit and then taking the wrong path. Like, you know, he had the option the entire time. He has this power called the Renegon, and it's literally means heaven's eye, but it says in the description, you know, of what it is, it can either level the earth or create a heaven. So it's one of those things, like, I feel like it's a reference to what we do with our own path.
Nice.
So I know 4 of those were anime characters, but, you know, they really are, you know, people I look up to. I know that some people, you know, are super into fighting. I love it, but I don't really, you know, I relate more to stuff like that.
Nice.
No, and I feel the same way. Like, you know, Pain, especially the story of Pain. You know, when you watch the anime or read the manga or whatever with Pain, watching him go through all the trauma that he went through, it's very understandable of like how easy it is to
be
slip
like that.
into that darkness or whatever. You know, one of my great parallels to that is the path Itachi took.
Yeah.
Is like he took it the same path but executed it differently.
He was
And-
really like ultimate justice at the
Exactly
end.
right.
And it was awesome.
It was super cool where Pain thought he was the final justice.
Itachi was a lot like Batman because, like, for example, the scene is when he's talking to Harvey Dent, or no, it's the other guy, and he says basically, you know, I'm not the hero they wanted,
He's talking
but the
to
hero
Gordon.
they needed.
He's talking to Gordon.
Right, but he basically is saying, I'm willing to look like the bad guy to be the good
Yeah.
guy. So
Yeah. That's a good parallel to the comic books.
Well, you got your 5?
I got 4 of them because I can't think of another one.
All right, well, let's hear them.
Neji from Naruto. He's
Dope.
one of my favorites. And, like, especially toward the end of the series where he actually, like it's such a good good ending and good out for him. And he just proves it. He does not falter. He sticks by his code. And really, like, early in the first series, Naruto, was it Shaolin Jump? When he first fights, oh God, who is? Oh, when he fights Hinata.
yeah.
And
The
Naruto gets all
tuning
pissed.
exams. Yeah.
And he realizes that what he's doing is the wrong way. Like he
Yep.
wants to change the course of his destiny, but he
He was
changes
so
it up.
ashamed to be a servant his whole life.
Yes.
But really embracing that made him better.
Yeah, exactly right. Next is Vegeta. Oh
Okay.
man, I love
Yeah.
me some Vegeta.
Yeah.
And like his unwavering pride in himself and like the strive to always be on the top echelon of fighters is something like I love it.
He embodies like that ultimate like masculine 80s
Yeah.
guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because he wears the singlet and
Yeah,
you know,
exactly
yeah.
right. And I think one of my favorite parts of the DBZ or in Dragon Ball Super is like when I just talked about this last night when Beerus first shows up and he's sitting there mocking everybody and he hits Bulma and Vegeta just loses it and is on par with a literal god.
Yes.
And for just a few seconds, but that's all it took. And, you know, and it's when somebody he loved actually got hurt.
Yeah.
And, like, he lost his mind. Like, that was so good. The next one I got is Gilgamesh from the Fate series. And mainly because he's such a tactical genius. Like, he doesn't care about winning. He just wants to live. So, and he does it very backhanded way, but I love the strategic mindset of him.
I've seen him in a lot of verses. He's apparently incredibly powerful. I
Oh,
haven't made
yeah.
it to that one yet. but-
Yeah, he's crazy strong or whatever, but like he never aims to like outright win. He just wants to like not be in it. You know what I mean? Like the whole series is like basically like just a fighting tournament. And he's like, I have to be here, so I'm going to survive. But if I can survive longer than everybody else, technically I win. And then the last one I got is Pain. And
Dope.
same reason, dude. Like I love the story of Pain. I love how he goes. That fight scene is one of my favorite fight scenes in all of anime.
It's amazing.
I guess really, if I want to boil it down, I would probably say Alex Louise Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist because he's a badass.
Yeah.
And he's hilarious.
And the mustache.
Yeah, the mustache,
Mustache
sparkle,
is majestic.
sparkle.
Look at this, man. For once, I'm not the one that fucking got derailed. That's great. That is absolutely great because I actually got real fighters. But that's all right. And I got more than 5 because, dude,
Oh, you came prepared. I love it.
trying to pick 5.
When he showed up, he's like, man, I'm having trouble with this top 5. I'm like, what is it? He's like, top 5 fighters. And I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, I can't narrow it down.
I can't. There's no way. And there's fighters that are left off this list. But I'm going to start with my absolute favorite.
I can't even name 5, so.
Usually I go from, 5 to 1. I'm just going to start it off big this time. My favorite fighter of all times is Spencer the King Fisher. 22-4, never had a title shot, never a number 1 contender. He just always come in there and bang. And one of my favorite things about him is he always left it out there. Like, it doesn't matter if he won or lost. He looked the same battered, bloody mess every time after every fight.
I can definitely relate to that.
Dude, he was... Have you ever seen any Spencer fights?
Not in particular that stand out to me, which I definitely need to if his record's that good and he's a banger. I need to check that out.
The only fight of his I ever watched, and I was kind of like, was his last fight with Frankie Edgar. Mm-hmm. It was just a straight wrestling match.
Might be getting older.
Yeah. But, he suffers from CTE now. He can't work nothing. But Spencer the King.
That's why I'm trying to get away from that. My last fight, I was ripped open. In this fight, I ate probably 50 punches. So, yeah, I want to avoid CTE if I can.
Right. Next on my list is Alan Belcher. You guys, do you remember Alan Belcher?
I've heard the name as well.
Dude, he was...
I like that you're going really in on it. I like that. No, that's dope.
He was super talented, and he's actually getting ready to make his return. He hasn't announced where yet. Hopefully it's over in Japan. But he is somebody that deeply feels that fighters cutting weight is a bad thing. Because he says it's the only sport where you go in there trying to kill each other, but you come in like a crippled deer.
Right. I can actually relate to that. Since I fight at 205, I cut a little bit for that, but nothing crazy. But even then, I still feel like shit. I'm cranky. I'm mean to my family that week. I don't want anybody to talk to me. I'll be at weigh-ins and somebody will be like, hey, what's up? And I'll be like, and I'm a nice dude and everything, but even then I just don't feel it. And plus, I'm trying to conserve energy for the fight. But when I fight at heavyweight, I feel great because
there's no cut.
Right. I walk around at 215 or 220.
That's small for heavyweight too.
It's very small. Yeah. Because it's just 10 pounds of light heavyweight. So yeah, I can relate, but I feel great going into the fight. My cardio feels good. I'm just, of course, 50 pounds heavier than someone. And that's like the difference between, Conor McGregor and John Jones. So
yeah.
I know those names.
Yeah.
I'd hope you know those names.
Yeah.
But so he's actually coming back to fight at a 205 catch thing. So that'd be neat because he's always fought at welterweight.
Maybe I'll run into him.
Dude, he's
He'll
awesome,
beat me
man.
up. Not in 2 years.
My next favorite is Fedor Emelianenko.
Okay.
Everybody loves Fedor.
I love Fedor.
He's fighting well past his prime, but
well, I can admire that he didn't try to go out undefeated. He
right.
easily could have.
When he fought Kevin Randleman in Pride, and this is when I was like, "Yep, Fedor's that dude." Kevin Randleman picked up Fedor, slammed him down, and folded him like an accordion.
Yeah.
And Fedor popped right back up because he knew how to take a fall.
And plus too, he's training with heavyweights. All his brothers and stuff are bigger than me. And, no, he definitely was ready for that.
Yeah. My next one is Joe Diesel Riggs. It's a name that's probably not super well known.
I know Joe Riggs.
Yeah?
Hell yeah.
Well, dude, you used to fight
He's fighting BKFC now, isn't he? Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he is fighting BKFC. I'm 99% sure. We might have to look that up.
Well, he used to fight at super heavyweight at the beginning of his career, and those of you who don't know, super heavyweight is 266 and up, I believe.
Yep.
Golly.
And then once he started getting a name, he started fighting at 175.
I can definitely feel that. A lot of people have said I need to try and cut to 85, and maybe one day, but not right now.
You got the build for it, man.
I could, I think.
Next one's Joe Daddy Stevenson.
Okay.
Love me some Joe Stevenson. And I just watched a show with him on it, and I was like, that's Joe Stevenson. To me, he's one of the people that have helped bring MMA into the forefront.
Right.
From his TV experiences. Next one's BJ Penn. Everybody loves some BJ Penn. I don't have
BJ Penn.
I don't have to elaborate too much on him.
His cardio was one of those things was never really matched, until now. And now it's we'll give it to him. It's kind of become the standard. Like everybody going into the UFC knows that they need to try and match that type of cardio.
And then Jens Pulver, another one that's maybe not so well known, but him and BJ Penn had a great battle. Quentin Rampage Jackson. You cannot make a favorite list of fighters without this dude. His attitude and swagger alone, like you cannot love. Like, it's impossible not to love Quentin.
Unless you're a door.
Adore?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah, on an episode of The Ultimate Fighter, he got upset his fighter lost, and he just, like, there's a meme of it now. He's just tears through this, like, it looks like it's made of cardboard.
I think I've seen the meme.
Yes.
I got 3 more. Brandon Vera.
Brandon Vera is awesome. I really like that he's still pretty competitive in one.
Yep.
I've watched a lot of his fights, and he's been knocking dudes out in one.
And as long as he's on his game, like, I mean, he's one of them fighters, he's either on or he isn't.
Right.
And he come in and he said, you know what? I'm going to fight at heavyweight. I'm going to fight at light heavyweight. He put it to Frank Mir. And I think it was his UFC debut, I believe. But, I mean, he's awesome. And my next one is actually Frank Mir.
Frank Mir is amazing. I love Frank Mir. I love his hair more than anything.
And dude's incredibly smart, too. That's what people don't realize is Frank Mir is incredibly smart. He
just got paid more than he ever got paid for a UFC fight to fight in, Ritter Promotions on the Jake Paul
Is it?
card. Yeah, he fought. I don't remember the guy he fought, but yeah, I think he made like $350K.
Nice.
Plus
I heard
some
that
pay-per-view.
kid, Jake Paul or whatever his name is, I heard he's actually, like, decent.
No.
He's not
No.
decent. He just fights people that can't
again,
I'll
fight.
say he's
I don't
decent.
know.
He never had an amateur career, and
Well, that's because he was big on YouTube and shit.
right. And I disagree with, because it's not fair for me to have 11 amateur fights, and then for some guy to just go, you know what I mean? So,
Sure.
like, I don't like him for that
I
aspect.
understand, like,
as far as his boxing goes, like, he has some skill because he has the money to just, have somebody to come train him all day.
Yeah.
But that grit, I don't feel is going to be there when he fights a real fighter.
No.
Oh, okay.
And everybody thought that this last Jake Paul fight, he's gonna be like, no, dude, you're fighting Ben. I can't even say his last name, Askren.
Yeah.
Like, Ben Askren has no hands.
And he didn't
None.
take that serious. He could have. Of course, he has access to a UFC training camp, and I've seen people who have trained for 3 months and would be competitive with Jake Paul. I mean, you can't tell me that Ben Askren, couldn't have got the work in. He just didn't do it.
Sure. I've only heard these things because I saw his name on, like, the PlayStation, like, home screen or whatever.
Yeah.
Set up the advertisement, said Jake Paul and whoever the fuck, and I was like, oh, wow. I can't believe this guy's actually fighting. I thought it was all jokes. Seriously, I didn't.
I did the first time I heard it. Logan, his brothers actually, I think they finally inked the deal for him to fight Floyd Mayweather.
The thing is, they're both like my size, man. Like
The Paul brothers?
Yeah. I believe it or not, I think Logan might be like 6'2", walks around at 200 pounds.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, Floyd Mayweather's what, 5'6" or something like that, and
He ain't
small.
going to be able to hit Floyd.
No, and I agree. But even then, it's just like a freak fight. Like, that's not a. Why don't we see him fight someone his weight and who's a little tougher this time? I'm not saying he has to fight Francis Ngannou, but if you want to keep doing UFC fighters, find like
Find someone that's got hands. Don't find a
Jimmy
fucking wrestler.
Crute. Do you know who Jimmy Crute is? He's a
I do not.
205er. He's an up and coming guy, and I watch him a lot because he's a couple years younger than me and just fought Anthony Johnson, not Anthony Johnson. Excuse me, Anthony Smith in the UFC. Lionheart. You know who that is?
No.
Anthony Lionheart Smith. He's amazing too. You might want to check him out. But I would like to see him fight a competitive 205er or a competitive 190. If he wants to be taken serious, I'm not against that. But nah, that was a joke. Ben Askren, come on, man.
Yeah.
Now, you keep bringing up weight and stuff. Like, is it really that important?
So,
I've had my ass whipped by small guys, so no. But ultimately, there's a saying, and I don't remember who the quote's by. It says a great big man will always beat a great small man. So it's like if you're equal with someone and you're the same weight, I mean, it can definitely make a difference.
I got you.
Especially, if we end up in a position where I'm on the bottom and I'm in a half guard position or something. Sorry to use like a term. Anyway, if I'm on the bottom and somebody weighs more than me, not only do I have to lift myself, I have to lift their weight.
Sure.
And yeah, I think it makes a difference.
Okay. I was just curious.
Especially
'cause-
like striking sparring too, man. When I'm sparring with my 135, 150 pound teammates, I'm not hitting them like I would my bigger teammates because, I can kick someone over. If I'm throwing an inside leg kick on somebody that's coming in on me, they're probably going to fall over.
Right.
Just because of the way it is. But with a heavyweight, I got big boy. He's got some cushion. So not all the time. Again, I've had my ass whipped by smaller guys. Dude, I get hit in the body all the time. The only time I've ever had my rib broke was by a guy that walks around at 130 pounds.
Jesus.
So I mean,
Because I mean, I
it's
used to
competition.
just street fight. Like I mean,
Right.
I was an angry little kid. You know what I'm saying?
So yeah, and
And
I've won fights.
I fought people who are 6'4" and shit, and like I've walked away and they're on the ground. Now, granted, still got my like I still qualified as an ass kicking,
right.
but like to me, it always just seemed weird. Like I can hit the bigger dudes just as hard as I can hit the smaller guys.
There's certainly a threshold, but again, when it comes to like like competition, I think weight is important. I think that you should be competing against somebody that's similar weight. And this is, I agree with you. My last 2 fights, I've had people who were more than 50 pounds heavier than me,
Yeah,
or around 50 pounds. The last guy was exactly about 50 pounds. So, and it could make, like, for example, I was against a cage at one point, and I was trying to get off the cage, and I had
He
my
was a big
underhooks.
boy.
He was a big man, and when it comes to me trying to get away from there, that's just that, like, 2 seconds that I'm being penalized for being underweight. But then, I'm faster, maybe better cardio.
Sure.
But ultimately, if it was a 205er, that situation would have never occurred. But it is what it is, and I agreed to these fights. But
Yeah.
that's a great question. I think it makes some difference, but ultimately, it's a fight.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, like I'm like again, I am uneducated as hell when it comes.
Yeah,
to
I
this stuff.
dissected that a lot. My
Yeah,
bad,
no,
but
no, you're
ultimately,
good.
like, yeah.
I'm always interested to learn. Like I don't ever want to be sitting in ignorance the whole time. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I like to learn.
The
Little guys
easiest-
can definitely whoop a big dude's ass,
Oh, yeah.
but yeah.
Sure.
The easiest way to put it is when I competed, it was all right. You're tough at 190. Imagine how much better you're going to be at 180, 175.
Right.
Cut the water weight, rehydrate the day before. Like that was the easiest way to put it.
So when you do weigh-ins, like, is that the day of or the day?
So
few
I
days
will
before?
recommend if you get a chance to check out my YouTube channel because I've been uploading like a little documentary of my life. And
Sure.
It's called From Couch to Cage, and it's just some clips of different stuff. So in one of the episodes, I have the weigh-ins from this fight actually, and you go in, and I didn't cut weight, mind you, but my opponent looked like he did because he stripped down, to nothing. When you go there, you usually show up a little early, that they'll call your name and you come up, and then you do an official weigh-in. Up until that point, you have to have your cut maintained. So it's once you get on the scale and you get off, you can gain back. In Kentucky, they limit it now because people were cutting like hella weight, like 30, 40 pounds.
Jesus.
But now it's 8%. So for me to fight 205, let's just use 10% to make it a little easier. I could be like 220, or no, because you had 25 pounds on, or no,
Yeah.
20 pounds on. I could be like 225. But usually I rehydrate up to about 215.
I got you.
When did they implement that?
I believe honestly, like right when I first started, so about 4 or 5 years ago, 5 years ago.
Because that shit was the Wild West back when
I know
I was competing.
Kentucky's Commissioner Todd Neal did a good job, and there was a gentleman. He didn't actually make a weight cut, but a guy that passed away in the cage. Rest in peace, Don Shea White, at a promotion in Louisville a couple years ago, and
I heard about that.
yeah, and God rest his soul. They've really cracked down a lot, and it was bad last year, or the last 2 years, because COVID. It was almost a year that we didn't get to compete. But 2 years ago, the commissioner that came in after Todd left really cracked down on a lot of stuff, started making fighters get like, all kinds of brain scans, making it impossible for people to come back. There were people that got suspended from a TKO loss until they got like, some crazy expensive scan. And it's just like...
Fighters can't afford that. Not at this level.
Yes, exactly, man. I mean, we get a little travel money and stuff, and then, I get some money from my sponsors, but, I'm not making anything. Like,
Right.
It's like football or basketball, when you're at that college amateur level, you're not making anything. So no, I just, now they do the 8% rule, and I think that's fair. I think that there were a lot of people getting hospitalized for that. I had a cruiserweight fight. It was supposed to be 225, and it's not adopted in UFC.
Sure.
It maybe should be. I think I'd be a good cruiserweight fighter because then I wouldn't have to cut any weight, and I'd only be fighting 225-pound guys. But I had a cruiserweight kickboxing fight because I also compete in kickboxing in Gatlinburg.
Okay.
And I drove all the way down there. My opponent said, "Hey, I'm in the hospital from the weight cut." And I'm like, "What? We're fighting at 225, dude. I'm 217 right now. What are you saying?" And I just ate Chinese buffet. And I was like, "Bro, I don't care if you're 270 pounds." I was like, "I'm already here." And yada yada. I didn't end up getting a fight. It was I got a great hotel room and everything while I was down there. But long story short, man, like, weight cuts are dangerous, but they're manageable. It just depends.
I mean, I see a lot of people just, not just in the world of fighting, the world of acting, and some other places. Like you see these people go through crazy weight gains and weight losses just to keep up with whatever standard they want to be in.
Right.
And I've always thought it was crazy. Like I've always maintained like 185 to 175 since I was 15 years old. And like, I mean, I'm incredibly active, but I don't work out or I don't cut weight or watch what I eat or anything like that. I just stay.
And I think that's a healthy way to be.
Sure.
I must say. That wasn't always my lifestyle. Like I said, I was 380 pounds.
And we're going to get to that after the break.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're going to take a break real quick?
Yes, we're going to take one break. All right.
Yep.
And then we're going to get to your backstory.
Sounds good.
And how you got to where you are today.
That sounds
and the
excellent.
journey you've taken.
All right.
Shorty.
Yeah.
I love you. Hit the fucking button. Yeah, that button. Hit it. Hit it.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
I didn't touch your button.
Touch it.
Hey, Ty, if you wanted to make a podcast, how would you do it?
Spotify Podcasters app, of course. Or hell, even the website.
Do they have any way you can edit audio and help with organizing your episodes?
All that and more. You can reach out to listeners and have feedback with their Q&A feature, and it distributes it to all other major places you listen to podcasts.
I just looked, and they got a video podcast set up and editing tools here, too.
So all you got to do is sign up at SpotifyForPodcasters.com or get the app, and you're done.
Damn, it's just that easy.
Oh, so we're back from the break. It's always fun to take a little break, get our minds right. Anyways, still here with Jesse Romans, the Pride Slayer, and of course Shorty. Shorty's always
I'm here.
Shorty's the man.
That's right.
I liked his fighter choice better. Sorry.
That's all right. It happens. This is the way it usually works with guests, and that's okay. I'm here for it. It's good that somebody likes you, Shorty.
Somebody
I mean,
does.
you ain't getting laid.
Yeah,
so.
that's right. That's right. Oh,
Yeah,
no, you want to go to dinner?
Yeah. You stole my joke before I said it.
There it is. I got it.
All right, Jesse. Let's hear about your journey from the beginning, because for those people listening that don't know him, like, you have a very interesting story. You came from a little bit of a troubled past to where you are now.
Absolutely.
Let's hear it, man.
So really at the beginning of the journey, let's, set the stage. When I was 18 years old, I graduated high school, and my high school experience, I lived in the middle of nowhere. My family wasn't super poor, but, I didn't have money for a car and maybe other things, and didn't really have any friends around. And, finally when I started to get mobile, I started partying a little bit, and I was around 380 pounds when I first started, getting social, and kind of through partying got down to about 310 pounds. Mm-hmm. And, through the partying phase of my life, which it was kind of short now in hindsight, but it felt like a long time.
Yeah.
It was about 7 or 8 months before I really started, getting into Kimbo Slice. Kimbo Slice was one of those guys. I would watch him on YouTube, and I would always in my head sit and think, oh, I could do that. I could, beat people's ass in the backyard. I'm 6'3", I'm 300 yada yada pounds, so kind of throughout partying, my friends would pull out gloves that, I'm sure you guys have drank before. We were talking on the
Sure.
break, and spar with your friends, and
Yeah.
drink some Four Locos and listen to Slipknot and burn some deck furniture and punch your friend's tooth out. And so, kind of that was really the beginning of it. And
Sure.
I know that sounds a little ghetto, but that was really the first fighting I had experienced. Here and there I'd had some fights in high school, of course, but not like a, hey, me and this guy are about to fight. I'm not pissed at him. What do I do?
Yeah.
And through that, I kind of developed a love and a sense of, okay, this is scary, but if you just you sit and focus real hard, you can punch that motherfucker in the face.
Yeah.
And, through that, I had lost a little bit of weight. I was down to about 310 pounds, and that kind of kept going on until I was around 20. And when I was 20, my friend Damian Miller, big shout out to him. He's not competing anymore, but he was a big inspiration. He had been fighting, and we went to high school together, and he's 135 pounds.
Wow.
And I was like, man, this guy's competing. I could do it too. Well, he told me, hey, I'm going to go to Georgetown MMA today. Do you want to meet up there and train? I was like, yeah. And in my head, I'm like, I'm going to go fuck these dudes up, right? And I go down there, and the head coach is,
That's the Killer Bees, right?
Killer Bees. Yes, sir. Yeah. Absolutely. Israel Gomez is the head coach, and the affiliate.
Super nice guy.
Yes, absolutely. But Adam Gomez is the head coach at this one. Israel Gomez is the affiliation they're under, and he was actually Anderson Silva's head coach at one point. So very, very good school. Shout out to Georgetown MMA. Well, I went down there and I took the class, and after class they said, "Hey, you guys want to roll?" And I didn't really know what that meant. He's like, we'll wrestle, grapple. Excuse me. You'll tap out, if something hurts. And I'm like, okay, I'm 6'3", 310 pounds. I'm going to whoop this dude's ass. 10 seconds, takes me down, heel hooks me, taps me out, my ankle's swollen up. I'm like, fuck. And it was weird because, I hadn't really had to face my pride up until that point. And when that happened, I went home and I looked at myself, and instead of, getting down about it, I was like, the Naruto inspirational music was playing in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew that it was something that, okay, I'm going to lose a lot and I'm going to get my ass beat a lot, but if I just kind of keep showing up, it's going to get better.
Yeah.
And so that's really what's happened since then. I mean, to break it down though, there's almost 3 main segments to it. So I started training maybe 2 days a week for about 6 months. And, during that period, I started to get a big head because I'm getting better. I'm showing up a lot. I'm, landing some strikes if I'm sparring. I'm getting some submissions, yada, yada. And I was at a party and I ended up getting into a fight with a guy, and he hit me first, but I really hurt him. And it was stupid. But long story short, I knew that I probably was in trouble with the law for how hurt he was, but this guy was kind of a unscrupulous character and always had warrants out and was always getting arrested and stuff. So I wasn't sure if it was going to come back and bite me in the ass. And about 6 months after that, I was partying again. And well, I ended up kind of having an encounter with a police officer, and he kind of asked my name, and I was like, oh, I ain't worried about telling you my name. And he goes, oh, you have a warrant out for your arrest. And I'm like, what? And he's like, he put his hand on his gun and he said, you're not going to give me any problems, are you? And I just raised my hands up and I said, no, sir.
Yeah.
I put my hands down, let him search me. He said, you got anything on you? I said, no, sir. Do whatever you need to, officer. And, through the conversation, he realized that I wasn't going to do anything stupid. And he didn't even handcuff me in the back seat.
Oh, wow.
For some reason, because we kind of, knew some similar people and stuff like that, come to find out. And he didn't even handcuff me in the back seat. He's like, you're a big boy, I'm not going to handcuff you.
Sure.
And he said, but you give me any problems, he basically said he'd fucking lay me out.
Right.
A roundabout way.
Yeah, I understand.
And I wasn't having that happen. So I ended up going to jail, and a bunch of things were running through my mind because I was a piece of shit.
Right.
I was a punk. I had kind of been cooped up my whole life. So, starting to drink and do dumb shit was fun to me now.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Especially I can see this a lot with fighting and stuff like that. When you first start in, you always have this big ego of yourself. Yeah. Especially if you grow up in a small town and there's not a lot of people around there.
You become Billy Badass.
Exactly right. Yeah. And so you have this huge ego of everything you did. When I was a kid and I was just fighting for the fuck's sake of fighting, and I had this huge ego trip, and we were at a football game at what was it? Cooper High School, I think. Yeah. And I got in this fight with this dude who was a little bit he was way bigger than I was. And dude, this guy fucked me all kinds of up. And my buddies had to drag me back to the car. But I went in there with a huge head. I was like, I will fuck this guy asunder.
Aren't you glad that happened in a way?
Oh yeah. And after that, dude, every time somebody was like, oh yeah, Shorty will fight him. And I was like,
no.
No.
And that's smart.
And because the one thing that really boosted my ego is there's this kid that was up here at the local high school by us. He got in, he was talking shit to one of my buddies, and I just I was cheap as fuck, dude. I just went up and smashed the back of his skull in and just started beating the shit out of him. And just because of that one instant hit in the back of the head, I had the upper hand. And after that, my head blew the fuck up.
Right.
And I was only 15. And for 3 or 4 years, I was this Billy Badass, and I got laid out one time, and I'm like, this is not where I want to be at.
See, for me, it was way different. The more I learned, and the better I became at the craft, it calmed me down.
Well, that's how I'm now, for sure. I agree with that. Yeah.
I started realizing, you know what, this is going to be easy, and I'm not going to get paid for it. Why do I want to fight you? Like, you're not a challenge to me. You're not going to make me any better by me whipping your ass.
I completely agree with that sentiment now, but I wasn't always that wise, to be honest with you.
And it takes a while for some people. It takes everybody a different amount of time to find where
me getting my ass whooped a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And, you know, like he was saying, that mentality, that big head, you know, the thing that ended it for me was when I finally got to jail, they were like, okay, your bond is $50,000. And, you know, it was one of those ordeals while I was locked up that I really had to take a look at myself. You know, my daughter was very young at the time, and, you know, looking at some substantial time in prison was horrifying to me. Thinking about my daughter growing into a young lady without me present really made me change my life. And I made a deal with God, and I said, you know, if I don't get locked up, God, I promise that the life that I'm leading, that I'll live for you. And he helped me get out of everything, you know, with as minimal punishment as possible, thankfully. Debt to society cleared. You know, I was on probation for a couple years and had time put on the shelf. And during that time, you know, if I fucked up even once, I was getting locked up.
Right.
Now, was this pre-competition, or were you
I
already
hadn't competed
competing?
yet. No, I hadn't competed yet. I had trained a decent bit, but no, at this point, so because when I first went in, I was about 20, 21, and trained for about 6 months, and then got in trouble. And then for the next year and a half, it was just, you know, in and out of me getting in trouble, and then working and trying to get my shit together and pay off fines, etc. And once I finally got that stuff paid, when I was about 22, I started training real heavy again. And, you know, it was one of those things. I wasn't perfect yet. I'd switched from, you know, doing drugs and stuff to drinking. I had gotten sober off anything hard, you know, but I was just drinking every single day. I was drinking Four Locos while I was at work. 2 or 3 Four Locos. I mean, I was straight fucked up at work.
No,
Four Locos is a your mother doesn't love
Yeah.
you drink.
Yeah.
right.
Like, she denied you to tit if you're out there drinking Four
And I mean, I'm
Locos.
poor. I'm not eating because I'm, you know, drinking type deal. And
Yeah.
it was honestly during this time is when I did take my first fight. I think I took my first fight when I was like 23, 24, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
like actual competitive
yeah,
fighting?
Yeah,
Okay.
fight. And even then, I got a funny story for that too. It was like I was such a bad alcoholic. I was such a bad alcoholic the night before. I had actually drinking an entire fifth of vodka and slept on a hotel room floor on 12 hours notice
What the
to
hell?
fight a coach. Yes.
God
Yeah.
bless.
I was there with like some of my team, and I wanted to fight, and I had all my like blood work and stuff because I intended on fighting anyway. And they had a guy pull like the day before, and the only guy they had was TC Shaw out of Grind MMA. And they're like, "You want to fight?" I was like, "Fuck it, let's do it." And I ended up having a 3-round war with this man and lost by decision. And it was one of those things. When I got out of the cage, win or lose, I was like, dude, that was insane. Everyone in the crowd would come up to me. That was awesome, man. That was even his people who, you know, were booing me when I first came out, you know, all have his shirts on, came up. Thank you for fighting. That was a great fight. You know, that was his retirement fight. He had had a lot of fights. And for me to have gone to a decision with a guy like that, my first fight, it built my ego in a positive way.
yeah.
It
Because, I mean, that right there, that's a cool experience. Like, I can only imagine what it felt like is, because these people who are originally booing you and stuff like that, and then at the end of the fight, they're like, hey, man,
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
for doing this. Like,
That's the-
man, I'm not like, you're not even in my fan base, and you're still, like, thanking me. Like, that's cool, man. Especially, like, that's how you know you're doing a good job.
That's the beauty of the MMA community, though, because both guys decide, hey, you know, I'm going to get in there. So first of all, if you're ever making fun of somebody for going in and getting knocked out, like, all right, have you ever gone in there?
And
Because-
how devastating it is. You got to think that guy's been training his ass off to
Right.
compete for that 9 times out of 10, unless you're Ben Askren. But no, you know, you've been working really hard to compete, and you go in there and you get knocked out. I've been knocked out. There's a video on YouTube, and it was the best experience. It was actually my second fight, about 7 months after that. So after I'd lost, I had taken another fight down in Hazard, and I actually won that fight against a dude who was 3-0. So that really built me too. Well, right as soon as I'd won that fight, another guy was like, "Hey, you know, I know you're 1-1, but we've got an undefeated super heavyweight that has a title fight." And I was about 280, so no, I was super heavy too at the time. And they were like, "You know, do you want to fight him?" And I was like, "Man, there's a title on the line. Yeah, I want to fight him." Well, I ended up losing by first round TKO.
Oh,
And
wow.
there was some controversy regarding it because there would have been some takedowns I would have got if he didn't grab the cage. But either way, I wasn't taking fighting serious at the time.
Sure.
And I needed to lose that fight. You know, it's like I go to eat with my family the next day and I can't hardly fucking chew because some dude beat my fucking brains out the night before and my jaw's swollen and shit. And, you know, I'm sitting there trying to have a good time. No, and then the whole week, you know, you got to work. People are like, hey, how'd your fight go? Well, I
Look at my
got
face.
ass beat. Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's embarrassing at that point.
Sure.
So I just used that embarrassment to train really hard.
Yeah.
And then my next fight, I took it 265. My next fight, I took it 265, and I fought at Turfway Park when they still had fights there. And I fought a dude, Julius Moore. He was an ex-Marine, and I ended up winning by first round TKO, knockout, whatever they ruled it, and just straight whooped this guy's ass. So that really gave me the confidence. And then right around that time, when I was about 22, 23, I started at Triple Crown MMA in Florence, which is where I'm still at. And since then, we've been working hard. My first fight out of there, though, you know, I'd been there probably 3 months. And my first fight out of there, I ended up eating like a freak head kick in the first round and got 9 staples in my head.
God.
Believe it or not, it didn't put me on my ass. Like, I was out for a second. He still managed to punch me a couple times right after the kick landed. This was at heavyweight. I have a picture. The dude's humongous. His name's Gavin Hernandez. And it was one of those fights like, dude, people asked me if I had brain surgery when they would see what happened the week of because I got all these staples in my head. You
Right.
can see the scar still. Like,
Yeah. As soon as you said it, and ran your hand
it
hand
looks like
across,
an
and I
axe
was solid.
wound. Yeah, and it was like the day before Halloween or something. So I think some people I were walking past probably thought it was a
Oh,
prosthetic.
sweet makeup, bro.
Yeah, no,
It was
wasn't.
good timing.
Yeah, and then right after that, you know, I took about a 6-month hiatus and trained super, super hard. Came into my next heavyweight fight about 250,
Yeah.
which is a good little bit under the weight cap. That's a nice weight for a heavyweight. And I fought a really tough dude out of American Top Team and ended up losing by decision. So I'm on a 2-fight losing streak at this point. But after the fight, I proposed to my wife in the cage.
Oh,
And,
cool.
Yeah, it was a great experience because we didn't get fight of the night, but it was a great fight. There was a lot of really good fights that night. But, you know, again, a guy out of American Top Team.
I mean, that's one of the top teams in the U.S.
Absolutely. And at the amateur level, you want to take tough fights sometimes to
Yeah.
really see where you're at. And that fight in the second round, he beat the dog shit out of me in the second round specifically. Beat the dog shit out of me. You guys can probably see my nose is fucking crooked as hell. That's from Ashley Hunt. I've had it broke probably like 6 or 8 times.
I believe
since
it.
then. But he fucking rearranged my face in the second round. And I sit down on the stool in between. And shout out to my coach, Jeff Johnson. I'll mention him a little more in a little bit. But I was sitting on the stool and he was giving me a way out. He said, "You done, big guy?" And there's a term, throwing in the towel. I'm sure you've heard it. And it happens sometimes. If you take damage, you can't answer the bell. And he's like, "You done, big guy?" And, you know, he's wiping my face off and told me, you know, don't blow my nose or my eyes would swell up because when you break your nose, that'll happen if you do blow your nose.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and everything in me was defeated. But there was like this little candle. And it was literally like almost like an anime or something, man. There was just this little candle and the wind was blowing in my forehead. And I'm visualizing it now. And my wife's in the crowds, my teammates are in the crowd, and I stood up off my stool, and I'd only just sat down, and I was like, "Fuck no, fuck no!" And dude, I went out there and arguably won that third round.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I lost the first 2 rounds hands down, but I think it ended up being 29-28.
Wow.
And I ended up going out there and winning the third round,
Yeah,
losing
that's
by
awesome.
decision. And it was one of those things I needed that. I needed that. Like, that boosted my confidence more than anything. I was like, okay, that's the worst thing that can happen. I just
Right.
had the 2 worst things that could possibly happen. Me getting head kicked and knocked out, and then me getting my straight ass beat by some dude. Well, a month later, I was scheduled to fight again. And I was supposed to fight this dude who was... do you know who Jeremy Durham is? He used to wear the cat onesies and fight locally like 5-6 years ago. If you don't, it's cool, but you should look him up later. It's pretty funny. He was a fun guy, but he would make a little bit of a joke out of it. But he had some serious karate, some really good kicks and stuff. And his only losses were to some pretty tough guys. And
Sure.
he had beaten a couple tough guys too. And we were scheduled to fight, but I knew that ultimately my boxing would beat him. Well, he pulled the week before for an injury or something relatable. He called me. You know, it was all good. He wasn't being a pussy or nothing. And the only guy they had left was a fucking... And so I'm down to 230 pounds at this point. I'm working hard. I was
Right.
working really hard. Like I said, I'd taken those 2 L's and I was working really hard. And the only guy they had was like 320 pounds. And
Wow.
this dude, his first fight he had lost, but then he had went out and fought some big ass dude in some guy his size because he's a big ass dude too, and ended up winning his boxing fight by KO. So he was coming off a win in boxing, coming back to the cage to fight me, and I'm like, okay. A week notice, I'd already sold a bunch of shit, and very similar to the most recent fight I had, and I ended up winning by knockout.
Wow.
Like straight cold beat. He's a good dude and everything, but yeah, I whooped his ass.
I imagine when it comes to fighting, like, you almost don't hate any of your opponents. You know what I'm saying? Like,
some people do. I don't. I definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to exercise that. Like, when you go into a fight with rage and whatnot, and like, oh man, I fucking hate this guy and I want to kick his ass and stuff like that. I think that's just a bad headspace to be in.
For sure.
I think it depends on the person, man.
And that's fair too. Some guys they get off on that and it helps them be successful. But I
always had to find a reason not to like my opponent. I had to, because if I went in there with any kind of it's just competition, like if I went in there with that, I'd take it easy on them.
Well,
I had to find that space. Like, why do I need to be mad at this guy?
I think I'm the opposite. It's like when I'm cordial with them, it's like I had a kickboxing fight against this dude that looked like Yoel Romero. And me and him were super cool. We're at weigh-ins laughing about, talking about Naruto. The dude wore like badass, like Itachi Uchiha shoes to weigh-ins and shit. And he's, fucking a monster. And but that fight, I like bit down on my mouthpiece. And there was one point where we headbutted. And you're not supposed to do that, but neither he and I meant it. We're fighting.
Yeah.
And he goes to say, he's like saying, I'm sorry. And like 2 years ago, I would have been like, oh, you're good, dude. But I'm just like, no, I fucking bite down on my shit. We're not talking. When the bell rings, we can hug. I'll pray with you after the fight and before the fight.
Right.
But when that bell's going, I'm trying to fucking kill you.
Right.
Like, but before that and after, I can't do it. Like, I don't know. I've learned to flip the switch really good now.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing is like even like I used to competitively play video games. And so like when you're going against people like actually playing or whatever, like as soon you're sitting there BSing about, your favorite video games, your favorite tactics and whatnot. But as soon as the game actually starts, you're like, fuck you! Ah!
And when it comes to a competition, it's like, if you're playing in your leisure time, you're going to experiment. Like, it's almost like sparring.
Yeah.
You're going to experiment with your style and your play style, and it's the exact same for MMA.
Right.
But when the fucking bell is going and it's going on our record, no, dude.
Right.
You're literally going to have to put me on a stretcher to get me out of here. You're going to have to kill me to get me out of here.
And having that mutual respect for each other, like, that guy, when he headbutt you or whatever, you understood, like, that wasn't, like, a threat or anything like that. It was just an accident or something like that. Yeah. But you guys have a mutual respect in the ring to where, like, we understand this can only go so far.
Yes.
And I imagine that's somewhere in subconscious.
It's not easy, I get the concept of getting mad before the fights, but the thing is, I have to listen to my coach, too.
Right.
And if I'm mad, I'm not fucking listening to him. I'm like, knock you out. But no, my coach, Jeff Johnson, he and I have really worked on it, and that's why I've gotten better. Not really. I've become more athletic on my own. I've become more knowledgeable on my own.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to thank Jeff, and I should bring him on sometime. He's a great dude, has a real rich history in the sport. He's my MMA coach, Juggernaut Boxing. We're an American kickboxing style, and it's like he has taught me how to fight. I've always had the grit. I've always been a fighter. That's just, that's kind of like a mental thing, if you will. Whether or not you're good, that's like a mental thing.
Right.
But when it comes to being technical, you got to have a good coach. You got to have a guy who's honest with you and doesn't bullshit you and let you think you're good when you're not.
Right.
If I'm doing something wrong, then, I need to be called out on it. But, I had started losing the weight. I was about 230 when I fought that 320-pound guy. Again, started taking it real serious. Well, slowly started getting down in weight. Started competing at 205 pounds in kickboxing. And, I was just knocking these dudes out and stuff and just having real good outings. And I intentionally planned on going pro in kickboxing, so I was focusing more on that. And then, that whole ordeal is taking place over the last, 2 years. And then the COVID shut down. We had about a year where I'm training, but I'm not competing.
Right.
And then my first MMA fight back was in February of this year. I hadn't fought in a year and a half since I was in Covington and won a submission. So I originally planned on fighting 205. Valor messaged me because I had won a kickboxing fight against their stud 205er number one contender fight. They're like, hey man, we want to give you a title fight ASAP. Just let us know. I'd been on a tear at that point in kickboxing, but I was interested in MMA. Well, they had already had a 205-pound title fight schedule, but they're like, hey, we've got this 6'7" undefeated heavyweight champion, CJ Baker. Do you want to fight him? I'm like, man, I'm 217, but I talked to my coaches. We watched the footage. we developed a game plan, and we went out there and finished him in the second round.
Hell yeah.
And won the Valor Heavyweight title in February of this year.
Right.
And then after that, I was toying with the idea of going pro at that time because we had some offers, and some people wanted to throw a little money our way to make a pro debut.
Sure.
But my coach and I talked about it, and we're like, okay, we need to at least get one more like good fight, not a chump. But because the thing is, you want to start getting paid for it when you're at that skill level.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to be fighting these guys for free your whole career.
Yeah.
And you can take it slow once you go pro. You don't have to fight Yoel Romero immediately or whoever. Brock Lesnar.
You don't want to rise to the top quick.
Right. You want to take your time and be smart with it. But we took this fight, and originally I was supposed to fight at 205 pounds, and I ended up having to fight a heavyweight boxing coach out of Detroit on a week notice. 2 weeks ago, or no, sorry, a week today. Yeah, I fought a week ago today at Rupp Arena, and we ended up pulling out the decision win, and it was an absolute battle. We won fight of the night. That was my first bonus.
Cool.
Yeah, and really this fight meant so much to me because before the fight, one of the commentators who had done a lot of the fights that I had been at before was like, hey, what's been going on in this camp? Like a background before they commentate, you
right.
want to, you want a background. And I was like, I plan on making this fight a brutal fucking display of who I am. A 3-round bloodbath if it has to be.
Hell yeah.
And I did not stop punching, kicking, and kneeing this dude. I absolutely put everything into the fight, and we brought it home. And I ate some nasty uppercuts here and there, too. And there were people that were even asking me on one of the Hard Rock fan pages, they're like, did that shit hurt, or did it just look crazy? And I was like, bro, they were hard. I mean, a 265-pound man just rearing up and sky uppercutting your head into the cage. Like, yeah, dude, they hurt. But the thing is, chin tucked, and we're down, we're gritty. Mm-hmm. At Triple Crown MMA and Juggernaut Boxing, we gruel, we grind. We sit and we do this thing called Peace in a Firefight, where while your opponent's drilling, you're throwing 1-2s. Because the thing is, you've got to learn to keep your chin down. We're not hurting each other. It's just that you need to know where your shit needs to be when you're throwing these combos. And if you get used to drilling it like that, when you fight, it becomes second nature. And that's why I wasn't getting caught with anything that knocked me out,
right?
Or even dazed me. It was keeping my chin down, keeping my hands up. But yeah, man, I've lost 175 pounds. I've stayed at it. Triple Crown MMA has done wonders for me. Again, anybody that listens and that's in the area, I definitely recommend you come try a free class. It's been amazing. And hopefully the next step, I think that was my last amateur fight. I've gotten some very nice offers. I'm going to go on vacation first before I know exactly what I want to do, but I've gotten some very nice offers, and we're going to be looking at a professional career.
Cool, man. That's awesome. I'm really excited for you, bro.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, yeah.
Now you got a lot of other stuff going on, so let's wrap up the fighting for now.
Yeah, sure.
And let's real quick just touch on some of the other shit you got going on, your merchandise, your documentary, all that stuff. Let's hear about it real quick.
So as far as like the Pride Slayer Media, I started a YouTube channel recently, kind of because I'm one of those guys like jack of all trades, master of none. And
I feel that.
Yeah, and it's finding that one thing to make a career on. I just I'm not that guy. I'm not like one thing. I like to do a lot of different stuff and have a variety. So I started a YouTube channel, Pride Slayer Media. I have a documentary kind of going about my life for people who are interested in fighting. But, that's just kind of one facet of my life. Mm-hmm. I have a documentary that I'm doing called Architects, Angels, and Aliens, where I'm doing like a documentary where I show the connections between a lot of ancient astronaut theory, the Bible, and then actual evidence of these occurrences. And it's like scientific and factual. I'm not using conjecture or my theology. I'm using actual like science to back up things. Like
I'd be interested to talk about that. I often pull parallels between the Bible and other aspects of the life. And
when he told me about this, Shorty, you popped into my head. I was like, Shorty's gonna love this.
Yeah, that's really dope.
So like for example, I'll just do it because it'll take me 30 seconds to sum it up. Like the first episode is over the Book of Enoch.
Okay.
And it was removed from the Bible originally because it details, angels coming to earth and breeding with women and creating the Nephilim.
Yep.
Well, I have proof that the Nephilim just wasn't in this area. So, like, you've heard of the term, the realms in Norse mythology.
Yeah.
Well, Niflheim and Nephilim are the same fucking word.
Yeah.
Which is with a different accent.
Yep.
There are other words that are parallel too. Another thing is like it says Azazel came to earth and taught men how to wield fire and metal. So did Prometheus in Greek mythology.
Yep.
They were talking about the same beings. So even then, we go to the flood that happened as well. There was a meteor impact that Randall Carlson documented 11,000 years ago. And then there's this ancient structure called Göbekli Tepe that was buried by humans 11,000 years ago to protect it from what? A fucking flood. But I've got like all this evidence for it and everything. It'll be in the first episode.
Give us the channel one more time so people
It's
can look
Pride
for
Slayer Media. Yeah, I should have that video dropped hopefully this weekend. I really want to put a lot of care into it. Make sure the information is just good for people and presentable. But yes, it's Pride Slayer Media. Please check it out. It'll be called Triple A in the heading or whatever. But it's Architects, Angels, and Aliens. And we're going to go over a lot of cool stuff. I've been working on this since I was probably 12 years old.
Really?
Just like in my head, and then finding all these parallels. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Like, that's the same as this. Wait, and then in this too? Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff with that. And, I'm really excited to do that. Probably more than any of my other projects. And then, what was the third one? I know there was another one. I'm not going to be doing a lot of fight stuff on there. Like I said, it's going to be... Well, the third one. I'm going to be doing Without Pride. So I want to bring people on... Because my name's Pride Slayer, and the name behind that, or the reason behind that, is that I want to slay my own pride, not anybody else's. And as a Christian too, I want people to love each other. A lot of people are stigmatized and dogmatic, and they look at certain things in the Bible and they want to hate people because they're different. So I want to bring people on who are different. You know, I have a friend who's a gay comedian out of Louisville. You know, I want to bring him on and do a talk where it's just, you know, I want to do it like a Lex Friedman style, where it's me and him talking on camera. And, you know, bring up subjects that are even taboo for us to talk about, and show that ultimately at the end of the day, you and I can be completely different, but we can love one another.
Right.
You know, and
I like it. I dig it.
Now my question for you is, because I come from a very religious background. Like, I grew up going to church every Sunday, Wednesday, and hell, sometimes Saturday. Yeah. And I always volunteered and stuff like that. Did you also grow in the church, or did you later in life get into it?
Later in life, I mean, my parents were always Christians, but, you know, they never really took me. I mean, for a couple years, we went to a little church, my mom and I mostly. But no, you know, and my dad prays every day, but we were more of those people like back burner Christians. And ultimately, I found out that that's really not any worse than being someone who goes to church every day, but is a piece of shit.
Well, see, like my dad summed it up for me. You know, talking on the religious aspect, is the only reason my dad went to church was because of my mom.
Right.
But my dad was always, like, every night before bed, he would sit us down, we would pray, we'd go to bed, and a lot of times, like, I don't sleep very often. I've had insomnia since I was a very young child.
There's too much to do and not enough time.
Exactly right. Yeah. That's not why I don't sleep.
I like naps.
Yeah.
I love sleeping.
But I would wake up in the morning and just sit on the bed and talk to my dad while he was getting ready for work or whatever, and he would always, like, give me these, you know, stories of, you know, religious icons, and he would parallel it with real life events that are going on in just our thing or whatever. And, like, my dad was a very good spiritual leader, especially for me, you know, and, like, as I've gotten older and growing up in the church, you see a lot of corrupt things go on and stuff like that. So I've developed
and that's more important
faith,
in my opinion, than going to mass on Sunday and, like, sitting and being bored and not really getting your cup filled. I would rather sit and listen to somebody on a Facebook live stream when I've got the time to sit and focus. All my stuff is done for the day. And I do think you should put God first, but it's like praying. That's what's putting God first. It's not going out and showing, hey, look at my Sunday's best, and I got this new car, and I'm going to church, and really, you know, I'm sleeping with this lady over here, yada yada. And I feel like there's a lot of that in the church, and church is great. I found my spirit through my pastor, Jeff Colon. But, you know, I watch the live stream. I don't go very often. You know, I've got other things going on, and I know that sounds terrible, and I should go. But it's one of those things, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm at church every day.
You still get it in, though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, everywhere I go, I want to present God, but I don't want to be a liar either. You know, again, I'm not going to tell you that I'm a person who's even a big fan of church sometimes. Right. Because sometimes I feel like I can't focus.
Well, I mean, there's, you know, growing up in the church or whatever, I can't tell you how many times I was just bored.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, me and a buddy of mine, this, like, right before the COVID shutdown, we went to a concert, and it was August Burns Red. And while we were there was these, like, 5 or 6 guys just talking to people on the street, you know, trying to convert, you know, bring them to church or whatever. And, like, I don't wear my Christian, like, face very often or whatever. And I was wearing, like, I always wear a comic book t-shirt. and I just had a Villains t-shirt on, and the guy was like, oh, and he was trying to draw parallels between that and the Bible and how what I was wearing was wrong. And I was like, cool, allow me to hit you with this. And I just started drawing parallels between the villains and real life, or not, real events in the Bible, and like all this other stuff, and like going into detail or whatever. And I was like, what you're doing is wrong, telling people that they're going to go to hell for all this.
And I completely agree, and that's honestly what I want to change too.
Yeah.
People like that ruin it for all the others.
Yeah,
there's
because
so many good people.
you bring it in as a fear tactic, and it's not great.
No, because I want to love God because I love God, not because I'm afraid of going to hell.
Yeah, exactly right.
I mean, I don't want to worry about the consequence. I want to worry about the promise.
Yeah,
Nice.
and I do that a lot of times. I've been on several podcasts where people, like, it's a Christian-based podcast, and they want to draw parallels between current media and stuff like that. So a few of my buddies know I am the comic book guy. So they call me up and like, hey, we want to do this episode where we talk about comic books. Would you mind coming on? Yeah, absolutely.
While we're talking about comic books, Spawn versus Kratos.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Such a good book.
Yeah, like, oh my God.
All right, I hate to rain on your guys' parade.
No, you're good.
Let's hear about the merchandise real quick. 'cause
Oh, the
we gotta
merchandise.
wrap it
Okay,
up.
so we're gonna be getting that out soon. The merchandise, I will give you guys a link, and we'll touch on that more next time. I'm working on finding a better provider than I had before, and then we're gonna get it out to you guys. I have Pride Slayer merch that'll be coming out. I did have a drop in February, but since then we wanted to find a new retailer, somebody who can get it to us, maybe a better quality. Because I want everything to be dope. I'm going to have all kinds of different stuff out. Again, every bit of the sales go to helping me, fund this journey. I quit my job in November. I was a manager of Buffalo Wild Wings, and quit my job to focus on fighting more. So, it means a lot to me. And if anybody believes in the journey, as soon as follow me at Pride Slayer MMA is my page. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, Jesse Pride Slayer Romans. I do have a personal Facebook, and I share a lot of memes. So I hope you guys like that.
All right.
Yeah, the merch will be out soon.
Well, that's it today.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Jesse,
That's cool.
You are our outer idiot of the day.
Awesome. I feel like it.
And like I said, that's it. So in the meantime,
In the betweens time.
remember, if you have ugly kids, adoption's always an option. Cue the music. We out.